Today we're going to take a dive into everything that's wrong with my LS Swap 350Z.
Okay, that's what I thought this video was going to be about. Keep watching.
Now if you're new here and haven't been following along, we recently swapped a 6-liter aluminum block LS into my 350Z to try to make it more competitive in Pro-Am drifting. But with a super short time to do it in, and me having no previous knowledge to LSs or LS swaps or anything of the sort, I was bound to make mistakes, and that's exactly what I did. Thankfully, none of them were too serious. We were able to make it out to competition and actually drive this thing. And considering I had no practice and the car had no testing, it's already proven to be competitive, but we've got to do better if we stand any chance in winning at Pro-Am level competitions. So here are some of the biggest issues the team and I ran into while getting this thing ready and trying to compete a few weeks ago. There she is. And it looks real good from here, but when we get a little closer, yeah, there's oil everywhere. I mean, like everywhere. That's a giant puddle. Let's fix that. To no one's surprise, a brand new, completely untested build has a few leaks. Some of them, nothing major, forgot to tighten a couple things, and some of them are kind of making me scratch my head. The biggest leak we had being one of them. We're leaking quite a bit of power steering fluid from the cooler that I have on the front of this car. You'll see we zip tied a rag there. That was to just kind of get us by in competition and not make a mess like that. This is just a regular, pretty generic cooler. This is the same power steering cooler I ran when this car was VQ. And I mean, the lines are routed the way they're routed. Everything seems to work. It wasn't leaking from here. We've got a nice high pressure line from ISR Performance that's working perfectly. It was really just leaking on this one side, and it only leaked when it ran, when the pump was actually doing its job, and it was leaking like from underneath the hose. Like the clamp was as tight as it could be, the hose was really pressed on there, but I'm thinking the hoses just don't fit tight enough on this little push-on style fitting, and maybe the pump puts out a little more pressure than it did on the VQ. I don't know. Rather than try to figure it out, we're just going to get rid of that thing and replace it with a new cooler that will have AN lines. That way we can just run AN lines and know that a little extra pressure won't be an issue. And fingers crossed we won't have any leaks. So got a pretty generic Derail or Durali cooler. Same brand cooler I had on before, but again, now we have AN fittings, and this one's quite a bit bigger. Hopefully it does a better job of cooling. I should say it's longer. It's not as tall, but should get the job done there. Just have to swap these hoses out for AN lines. Hopefully that solves that problem. Pretty simple fix. Should have just done AN lines in the beginning, but I had that cooler laying around, and it's way quicker and way easier just to cut some rubber lines and push them on a fitting and call it a day. And pretty much everything was rushed on this car, especially in the last week or so leading up to hot pit. But that's fine, we're fixing it now. One of the other big issues I had, and this was totally my fault. Again, I'm learning on this. I haven't messed with LSs before. When we got to the track and actually got this thing started, it had a few random leaks that I knew we had to fix, but I didn't quite know where all of them were coming from. And one of them was literally an open hole that I didn't even know existed. So we are running an ISR Performance LS 350Z swap oil pan, made for this swap. And it moves the dipstick to the front of the oil pan. You can see that's the dipstick, and it goes right down there. Kind of see that little brass fitting. What I didn't know is the factory dipstick goes back here, and you can't see it at all. But you need that. It's needed because without it, there's a hole at the very bottom of the block where the flange is for the oil pan, and that hole doesn't get completely covered by an aftermarket pan. It gets like 80% covered, which leaves 20% to just be completely open. So when the car's running, it's kind of just shooting oil out of this little hole that shouldn't have been left wide open. Now we found this at the track Friday night when I was supposed to be qualifying. So the easiest solution was to go to the parts store and buy a factory dipstick because it comes with the O-ring, and we were able to just shove it in there, and it worked, kinda. Now the huge mess we have in the engine bay with oil everywhere was the result of a dipstick coming out and then spraying oil everywhere. Problem is, I don't know which one. I actually think it's the one off the ISR pan, and I don't know if we just didn't seat it all the way in or what. But regardless, this is a problem we have to fix. And the solution is quite simple. ICT Billet makes a dipstick tube plug for Gen 3, 4, and 5 LS engines. It's literally just a little aluminum plug with some O-rings. So we'll tap that on in, get rid of my secondary dipstick here. And maybe we'll just like run a zip tie over this or something so we know that it stays in, because see, it wasn't even seated all the way in. I think that's what happened, is it just kind of sat like that, and then it wasn't until I was full tilt coming off the bank that it shot oil everywhere. Thankfully, not a crazy deal to fix, but it is a pretty funny mistake. Again, that's on me. I don't know these engines very well, and that's why I wanted to tackle this job myself and not just drop the car off at a shop and pay someone to do it. It's because I want to know how stuff works, even if it means finding out the hard way. Thankfully, all we did was make a little bit of a mess. We didn't hurt anything. I didn't lose oil pressure and have catastrophic failure. Just got a little bit of a mess to clean up and a hole to plug. Getting back on the power steering cooler stuff, I am going to have to make a new mount since that power steering cooler is way longer, which means I have to cut the old mount off, which means I need to get the radiator out of the way. Which brings me to the next thing, which isn't really a mistake or a problem. It was a temporary solution that I have to make not so temporary. Because this car never ran prior to actually getting to the track, there was never water in it. And I forgot to bring water, so when we got to the track, we had hose water. That was all we can get our hands on. So that's what's in the radiator, which is not a long-term solution. So let's get this radiator off so we can get the new power steering cooler mounted and get this hose water out.
Also, as I'm getting ready to pull this radiator off, I just realized that's a 10 mil wrench that I thought I lost at the track. I'll keep that.
This is one of the hard parts about building cars, is knowing when to stop, knowing when to say, okay, that's good enough, it'll get the job done. This radiator support's a good example. We built this in a hurry, and it's not bad, it's just not my favorite. And the thing I dislike about it the most is that it has no built-in jack point. So we tubed the front end of this car, but I didn't design in some kind of front jack point, and it makes life super easy when you have that, especially because the trailer I have to swap wheels. So it's like every event I'm jacking the front of the car up and swapping wheels over, and it was something I wanted designed into it. We just didn't have the time to really think it through. This radiator support was made in a few hours with Kenny and I just kind of bending some stuff and welding it in, and it works. The radiator is mounted very strong, it's secure, it worked, and it doesn't even look half bad. But now it's like, do I redesign the whole thing, cut it off, rebuild it? Can I add to it and maybe add some strength here or there? I don't know. Like I said, this is a hard part for me, is when do you just call something good enough? Because I know it could be better, but I also know that it works. So it's a game of figuring out where your time is best spent. And as much as I want to cut this off and redo it, I don't know that it's a priority, at least right now. Here's a better look at the radiator support. Like I said, it gets the job done. It doesn't look half bad doing it, but I don't think it's strong enough to just like put a jack under the middle of it, because it is only 1-inch tubing. Now it's thick. I think it's like 090 wall or something up there. So it's good stout tubing, but stout enough to jack the whole front of the car up? I don't think so. But let's just not worry about that right now. We've got to cut our cooler mount off so we can make a new one. Well, you know how the saying goes, curiosity killed the radiator support. Before I start adding to this thing to make it strong enough to be a jack point, I'm not convinced that the tubing itself is strong enough to be a jack point. Again, it's only 1-inch tubing, but I figured there's no better way to find out than just put a jack on it and try to lift the car up. If the center of the tubing deflects a lot, like it has a big bow in it, I know it's not going to work. If it stays pretty strong, I can add some gussets to the sides and it should be plenty good, but let's find out. Oh, yeah, that's not looking good. All right, that answers that question. If I want the radiator support to be a jack point, I'm gonna have to cut it off and redesign it. We don't have time for that, so let's just move on, and we'll have to address that another day. The snowball continues here. So cut the old mount off. I was mocking up the new cooler. While I was doing that, I thought, let me check my to-do list, because I know there's something else on there that I should look at before I mount this. And that's supposed to be an oil cooler. So oil lines come off the oil pan on the back of the engine, run underneath and up to a remote oil filter. Ideally, we have an oil cooler on the front here, which means I need to keep that in mind when mounting this thing. So initially I was going to mount this just kind of like centered up. It's actually just long enough to like bridge the gap here. You do little tabs off those, call it a day. But then where is the oil cooler going to go? So maybe I offset this over here, put the oil cooler there, or just offset it a little and put the oil cooler over there, still center it and put the oil cooler on top. And I don't have the oil cooler. It's supposed to show up tomorrow. So do I really want to mount this without that? This is just kind of how building cars goes. But let's just keep moving on and figure it out. Okay, here's the solution I came up with, and hopefully I don't end up regretting this in the future. It is kind of in the front of everything. Let me show you what I mean. So, had a scrap piece of whatever this is, I don't know, 1/2 inch rod or something, bent it around, and now we've got our power steering cooler mounted to that. You can see just did a little tab riv nut kind of deal, offset it just enough that I think the oil cooler should fit right there and be okay. My only concern is how far this sticks out of the front now. I mean, it was the same place the old power steering cooler was at, so I guess it doesn't stick out any further. I'm just worried once we get the bumper and everything on, it should be out to like here. Actually, let's just put the bash bar on and confirm how far back this is. All right, so with the bash bar mocked up, we actually have more room than I thought. So if I do ever get into the front of somebody, I'm gonna hit this first, and there's a bit of room before I get to anything down here. Same thing when the oil cooler's in place, so I think we'll be okay. You guys ever feel a little under the weather, a little sleep deprived, and you think, it's fine, I'll just push through it. I got work to do, I got a race car to build. Well, that was me on Sunday when I built this little lower bar where we were gonna mount the power steering cooler, oil cooler, and it turned out cool. I mean, it looks good, it serves its purpose, right? We got the cooler mounted there. It supports the radiator little things pretty good, and like even my welds were decent, definitely getting better. You know, did riv nuts on the tabs, like pretty legit, looks cool. So you're thinking, awesome, are you just showing this to show off? No, not at all. So when we put the radiator in, like that, doesn't work. Totally overlooked this, and you can see how it comes in. It can't sit under the radiator like that. It stops it from sitting in these little channels here. So you can see there's, 2 fingers gap from where this is supposed to sit because it's now sitting on this bar. Same story on this side, and even our hardware that I used would hit the radiator. So that's cool. Again, this is just turning into a video of like what's it like building a car. Yeah, it's like this. It's a lot of stupid things. You overlook a little detail and you end up building something cool that you can't use. So I'm gonna get the cutoff wheel, cut this off. Back to square one. I don't think I'm gonna bore you guys with exactly how I'm gonna fix this. Also, because I don't even know how I'm gonna fix it yet, but I'll figure it out. We'll get everything on and then start mocking up the oil cooler. All right, this is kind of getting frustrating if I'm being honest, and I am so close to just cutting this entire radiator support off and rebuilding it. Like I'd mentioned, there is no integrated jack point. We know it's not gonna work. And it's just not ideal, especially because I had to cut that little railing off that I made. Well, I cut part of it off. Let me show you where I'm at. And I either need to call this good enough and just run it, or cut everything off and start over. And I haven't decided that yet. So the oil cooler came in. It's mounted up there. Power steering cooler's mounted up there. And we used the same little rail that I already had running down the front. Same little tab with the riv nut here. I did another tab here for our oil cooler. But because I had to cut it, there's nothing on this side. Nothing holding that in place. And there's nothing on this side. Right, so again, the radiator's just kind of floating there. This is just floating here. Which, this is how I ran it at Hot Pit. There was nothing coming around supporting the radiator, but I knew it was temporary. Because again, there's a decent amount of weight on it. And yes, I have a mount that goes across the top to hold it, moving this way, but it doesn't really support the weight that it does on the bottom. And now I'm adding the weight of an oil cooler. And no matter what I do, I have to figure out a mount for this side. So we got to do something, even if it's just a bar like from here to here. that would work. I don't know. The problem I'm having is that I feel like I'm adding on to something I didn't like from the beginning. Because I can add on a few more tubes. I can make this thing a little stronger so the radiator's fully supported and that the coolers are supported. And for the most part, it'll all work. But I'm not going to be satisfied with it. There's no jack point, so we can't get the front of the car up without going all the way back to the subframe, which is how it has been. So it's not a new inconvenience. It's just the same inconvenience I've been dealing with. And it's just frustrating. I talked about this earlier in the video. What is worth putting my time into? And it's hard because I keep rushing to make events. Drift Roulette is now in like 4 days. And I was trying to bring this there not to compete, but to at least use the last half of the day to practice. Because again, I haven't got any seat time in this. Which would mean rushing to finish this and just kind of scrapping together what I can and making it. Which I could do. I think I have enough fittings to run all the lines to the oil cooler. But I don't have the right fitting to add in an oil temp sensor, which is something we wanted to do. And I still have a bunch of other problems that I haven't even started fixing. So it's like, do I want to cobble everything together just to make it to an event that I'm not even competing in? Or should I sit this event out? I mean, I can't literally sit it out. I have to be there. But driving wise, cut the front end off, redo it the right way, kind of fix all the other little issues the right way instead of just a little band-aid, and then we can schedule a test day down the road. Because regardless, I'm going to need that. I need some seat time. I really need to dial in this swap and the setup and everything else that's new, or I'm just not going to be competitive in hot pit. And we didn't do all this work to lose. I'm sure I'll still lose a lot of battles, but hopefully less. At the end of the day, building race cars is hard, especially when a lot of it is totally new to you, like it is to me. And the more I get pushed into these last minute band-aid fixes to make it to an event, the less fun I have. And if I get to the point that I'm not having fun, I'm kind of over it, because that's the whole reason I do all this stuff, right? It's fun. Like, yes, I want to go pro, and someday maybe these videos will make a couple bucks, but ultimately it's all because it's fun, and I love doing this stuff. And I don't want to lose that just to slap a band-aid fix on this thing so I can go to an event that I'm not even competing in. So I think this is me telling myself, let's slow down just a little bit, get this car actually sorted, and put the time into it so I can show up to the next round of hot pit with a dialed car and a little bit more confidence behind the wheel. So if you don't see this thing at Drift Roulette, that's why. I might still bring it and just park it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. This definitely wasn't the video I was planning on shooting. As the intro went, I was planning on just fixing all these issues and having a great time, but that's kind of part of it all, is just reflecting on what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you can do it better. And I definitely think I can do this better if I give myself a little bit more time. So I'm going to keep working on the little stuff that I can fix. I will see you guys at Drift Roulette this Saturday. And trust me when I say Hot Pit Round 2, we are showing up with a well-sorted car and a slightly more sorted driver. At least as good as I can be. That's going to be a wrap on this one. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. And as always, I will catch you in the next one.